Welcome to Truth Sentinel, watching over the truth in the news. Today's going to be a slightly different episode. From time to time I go to other shows, to other podcasts, and I'm interviewed by them. It's a chance to relax and let someone else ask the questions, and also give listeners a chance to hear a little bit more about this show. So I went to speak to Michael and Daniel at End of Days Radio. That's endofdaysradio.com. And they had a few questions to ask me. I hope you enjoy listening to it. We talk about a myriad of topics, from Lady Diana's death to Doctor Who, football, David Icke, Alex Jones, reptilians, royals, gun control, cloning, other conspiracies such as 9/11, travelling, and many other topics. We're going to go over to them straight away now. So settle down, relax, and enjoy the show.
My name is Michael, and you know Daniel already. I'd like you to tell us just a little bit about yourself before we get into things here, Scott.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me on here. It's nice to meet you guys. And I'm in Thailand at the moment. It's 12 o'clock, but it's actually morning for me. I'm a bit of a late riser. So I've been drinking strong coffee. About me, yeah, I'm a bit of a traveller, really. I travel around the world, backpacking, really, on a shoestring. I've been going to lots of different countries and going to different sites of historical interest most of my life, really. That's part of the reason I started doing a show myself, because I seem to end up in places that were connected to the news. You know, places like Ukraine and Fukushima. I used to live in Fukushima, well, right near Fukushima for a couple of years, and used to live in Odessa, where there was lots of troubles while I was there as well. And in Thailand as well, there always seems to be a government overthrow when I'm over here. So I decided to do a podcast myself.
Just about to ask you that.
Yeah, I was uploading other people's shows, and then I started getting quite a few subscribers, and then I thought, why don't I just do this myself? Because there's a lot of interesting things happening around me. So I sort of got into doing it myself, and I've been doing it ever since. I try to sometimes link the location I'm in with some of the topics. Not always, but sometimes, right. You know. So when I was in Egypt, I sort of interviewed people about the pyramids, you know, and try and get alternative views as to what they're all about. And obviously in Ukraine, there was lots of stuff kicking off while I was over there. So
I'm glad you're telling me this, because I haven't had a chance to listen to all of your shows, just a few of them. And that got me even more interested in listening.
I've always loved traveling, and when you move from country to country, you see different perspectives as to what's going on in the world. And it also gives you lots of opportunities to speak to people. Like, you know, in Thailand, I started interviewing people related to the missing plane MH370. When you're traveling around, you can actually get to meet people involved, you know, firsthand in the story. So I found it very useful. So yeah, that's basically why I do my show.
Were you inspired by anybody?
Well, I mean, I always used to listen to Coast to Coast and Art Bell and people like that. So I guess, you know, I guess I'm inspired by Coast to Coast. I don't listen to it that much anymore, but I used to sort of fall asleep listening to shows, and I still do. In fact, I think if I don't have a podcast to listen to now as I'm drifting off to sleep, I think I'd probably need to take a sleeping tablet now, because I find just listening to shows really helps me relax. It's a really nice way to drift off, and maybe even when I'm sleeping, I'm taking in information in my subconscious mind. Who knows? Sometimes I'd have to listen to the podcast again the next day, because I used to always listen to it before I go to sleep, and then miss some of the more important stuff, so I have to listen to it again the next day. Yeah, I tend to listen to people who I can relax to at the same time.
And speaking of that, what shows are you listening to, if you are at all?
I've started listening to your show recently. I was listening to your interview with Gareth Icke. He was one of our guests as well. I found that interesting. Hagman and Hagman. Yeah. Sometimes listen to those guys. Richard D. Hall. I don't know if you've heard of that guy. Rich Planet TV.
I'm afraid not.
He's pretty good. He's pretty good to listen to. David Icke, I like listening to some of his stuff. I don't agree with everything he says, but I still find his perspective really interesting. Coast to Coast, I still sometimes listen to, not as much as I used to. It's more subjects I listen to. So if I see a subject someone's talking about, then I'll tune in and have a listen.
Yeah, and it's interesting that we're talking about these people right away, since they were names I was going to throw at you and ask for your opinion on these folks. But Alex Jones, he's a bit of a weird one, right?
I met him actually, only briefly. I shook hands with him, but when he came to England to cover the Bilderberg meeting in Watford in England, I met him briefly, and I think his heart's in the right place, but I think maybe, his channel's become a bit too commercial, with all the adverts and
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. I still think I wouldn't criticize him too much. I still like him, but yeah, some of the stuff he focuses on, it's just not really my thing, like when he talks about the Mexicans all the time, like Mexicans coming across the border all the time, it turns me off a bit,
Understood.
He's kind of the guy that people that aren't really into conspiracies and stuff like that, they might check him out and actually, maybe it'll just make them think a little bit. I have to admit, as comical as Alex has been, he had a big part in kind of helping me understand the global conspiracy.
Yeah, definitely. And, I tuned into him many times, and he's done some good stuff, infiltrating Bohemian Grove and things like that. That was great. And I still think he does well. It's just sometimes when he goes a little bit crazy, it probably sort of loses credibility for some of the things he's talking about. But I don't think he's like a disinfo agent or anything that people are saying. I still like him, and I still respect him.
Of course, I kind of have to respect all these individuals who get behind the microphone by default. Really, it's not an easy thing to do.
It's not, no. I mean, if you're going to talk on any subject with any authority, you need to do some research. And Alex Jones certainly has some knowledge. He does research. He can talk about subjects, and people who criticize him, if they had a debate with him, I bet they wouldn't get very far, because he probably knows a lot more about the subject he's talking about than they do.
Correct. I'm not going to argue about that. That's a good point. And back to David Icke. He's another one who lots of people bring him up and sort of laugh and then criticize him. Is it true that he was doing some sort of drug on the air during an interview?
I haven't heard that one. If he has, then good on him. A bit of public experimentation. That's great.
I wanted to do that with someone. One of our earliest guests that we try to bring on again, because me and Daniel screwed up the recording the first time. He was really into psychedelics, and the first time we interviewed him, he was very high on mushrooms. And it was probably one of the best interviews we've ever done.
Maybe you should do mushrooms at the same time. That'd be quite interesting.
I don't know.
That'd be crazy.
I mean, me and Daniel are going to be doing a show in the near future, and we're probably going to be drinking the entire time, right, Daniel?
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm kind of afraid of that. So I could only imagine if we actually did mushrooms on the air, that wouldn't be good.
It might be amazing. Yeah, I've thought about doing a show and drinking as well, because there used to be a guy on TV in England who used to do a cooking program, and whilst he was cooking, he used to drink wine, and by the end of the episode, he'd be completely drunk. And I used to find it hilarious, and I think people like that kind of stuff,
Yeah, I think they do. I think they're all about the drunken idiot shows out there. It's a fun role to play at times too, no doubt.
Are you into Doctor Who at all?
Oh, good question.
Not really. I used to watch it when I was younger, and it used to be a lot scarier when I was younger, and then they started bringing in people that just made it kind of a bit more of a cartoony kind of thing. But it used to terrify me when I was younger.
Yeah, some of the subjects on there are pretty scary.
Yeah, I think I used to get nightmares when I was younger about one that was kind of related to Egyptian stuff, and this Egyptian Ra god used to appear, and when I went to sleep that night, it started appearing to me as well, and it used to scare the hell out of me. But more recently, I haven't watched the sort of more modern episodes, but it's after a while it started getting silly. They brought in some actors and actresses that were kind of more pantomime kind of style, and I think the budget went down a bit at the BBC, so I lost interest a bit around them, but maybe I'll check it out again.
Yeah, a lot of American fans of the new rebooted series.
Oh, okay. I mean, one of our listeners actually did play in the theme tune. He was the drummer in the theme tune for Doctor Who.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he was also the drummer for Prodigy as well, but he contacted us a while ago because he was interested in the MH370 story.
And to circle back a little bit, how much of David Icke's beliefs do you fall in line with what about the royal family? Is it possible that there's some weird conspiracy things going on with them?
Absolutely, there's weird conspiracies going on with them. I listened to your episode with Gareth Icke, and I totally agree with him that they're a complete waste of time and money. Quite how people still fall for this in this day and age is just unbelievable. But the British public, by and large, do. They, generally support the royal family, and it's just ridiculous.
I can't believe it.
It's ridiculous, let's give as much money as possible to one family for pretty much no reason apart from their bloodline.
It's almost like you're reading my notes, Scott. I was just about to ask you about this.
Personally, if I met, say, some of the younger members of the royal family, I wouldn't have anything against them. It's just a ridiculous concept. And I would say to people who think it's a good idea, or think that then these people are nice people, well, imagine you were in a position where you were getting all the money you ever needed, and if you met a member of the public, they were required to bow down to you and call you your highness. Would you stand for that? Would you let people do that? And personally, I would never let anyone do that. So you've got to remember, these people do actually enjoy being bowed down to. So they must be extremely arrogant people. And if you take people like Prince Philip, he makes mistakes all the time. They're mistakes. That's his personality. He insults people all the time, and the press puts it down as a, kind of crazy old man who's a bit old now, and it's kind of laughable. But he's basically a Nazi. He used to hang out with the Nazis.
Yeah, the whole royal family is pretty gross.
One thing that I've always been bothered by was the way that Princess Diana was killed. Do you think that could have been a conspiracy?
I think she was probably murdered, and this is one of the most photographed women in the world. And where does she get killed? In a tunnel where no one can see her. That's to me, that's pretty suspicious. People talk about a bright light that occurred in the tunnel. Well, if you're driving through a tunnel being chased by paparazzi at 100 kilometers an hour, and then the tunnel's flooded with light, and there's posts in the middle, good chance you're going to crash. I had David Shaler, ex-MI5 guy, on my show, and he thinks she was killed as well. And I think a lot of people do, especially abroad. When I'm traveling, people think she was killed. It's just royalists in England who think it's a ridiculous idea that she'd be killed. But I think she was murdered. Quite why, I'm not entirely sure. I've heard lots of different theories, but I'm not sure why. But yeah, I think she was assassinated. Yes,
that's really sad. And being that you've been so many different places, what is your favorite food in all the different, since you've obviously tried so many, what is your favorite?
Well, it's no accident I'm in Thailand at the moment, because food, does play a big part in places I go. I do try food, and Thailand has got amongst the most amazing food. Part of the reason I'm here is to get healthy, and so easy in Thailand because the food is just delicious. They use a lot of natural foods, vegetables, coconuts. I love coconut water, drinking coconut water. It's one of the healthiest drinks you can have, and you can get it here so cheaply, So I would say Thailand for food. But when I say that, if you compare it to other countries as well, like Mexico or, Italy, there's lots of food around the world. Kazakhstan, I used to live in Kazakhstan, and they have the best shashlik I've ever tried, and there's brilliant food everywhere, really. But Thailand in particular, if I had to choose, I would say the food here is pretty good.
I love that peanut butter chicken stuff that they have. Oh my God, that's good.
Yeah. Amongst other things, that's good. I like chicken with cashew nuts. And a lot of people think the food here is spicy, and certainly some of it is, but only if you want it to be. You can have much milder stuff as well.
Get a little bit more into your program. What does Truth Sentinel actually mean?
Okay, so I kind of looked at it as like, Sentinel is a guard, is a sort of synonym of guard, and it's sort of like I've got the symbol of the satellite looking down on Earth, and as a kind of sentinel looking at, trying to get the overall picture of what's happening in the news. As I'm sure you know, and some of your listeners, or many of your listeners, the mainstream media is kind of a sanitized version of the news, and to get any kind of perspective on the news, you need to listen to different types of news. So news from around the world, really, and try and piece it together. I think it's very difficult to find the truth. But on the program, I try to ask a lot of questions, and I can't always give the answers, but I know sometimes I know what's not true, and I know that there's things that we're being told that aren't true, and I'm just trying to find the truth, but it is very difficult. Basically, I used to go to different countries and see places of interest that interested me, like the Mayan temples in Guatemala, and going to places like Hiroshima in Japan, and speaking to survivors there, and going to the pyramids, and going to see biblical sites.
Israel is so controversial.
Yeah, I was quite surprised when I went there. I mean, I knew there was obviously problems there, but when you go there, there's guards everywhere, and I was trying to go and see some of the mosques and things, and they would only let Muslims go into some areas, and but I did find Jerusalem just one of the most interesting places I've been, I think.
Interesting that there's so much centered around that area. Do you believe in the end of days at all?
In some ways, I want to believe in the end of days, because I think sometimes life gets a bit boring. And I know it's a bit selfish for me to want the entire universe to end just for a bit of amusement. But I think possibly we are. And I think either from a kind of religious standpoint, we could be in the end times, or even just I think the fact that humankind has the ability to exterminate each other, I think it's inevitable that that's going to happen as well. So I think yeah, we are.
And on your program, has there been a favorite guest that you've talked to?
Difficult one, really. I kind of enjoy speaking to all the guests. I think I've got a guest coming up, which might be my favorite, turn out to be my favorite guest, just because it's someone who, from an early age, I've been really, really interested in, and that's I don't know if you've ever read the book The Dice Man by Luke Reinhardt. Have you?
No.
Okay, I recommend it anyway. It's a book about a guy who throws a dice to decide on everything he does and everything he says, and it kind of sparked. It was an international bestseller, and it kind of sparked off schools of philosophy and people deciding to lead more random lives and to try and lead their lives by rolling dices to decide everything they do. And if you try it just for a weekend, you'll have some really interesting times. You have to give yourself sort of 6 options and make at least 3 of them really far out of your comfort zone. And he wrote this book in the 70s, and I read it, and I used to lead quite a random life anyway, but it kind of really appealed to me, and I'm going to be interviewing him in a couple of months. So I think he may turn out to be one of my favourite guests, but I've enjoyed speaking to all the guests. Like, everyone's got something to offer,
Do you usually use Skype, or do you ever do an in-person interview?
I've only done one in-person interview, and that was with David Shaler, the ex-MI5 guy, who I went to meet. That was very interesting, actually. He lived in a kind of abandoned caravan on a public walkway where people were walking their dogs. It was kind of quite weird, but that was the only face-to-face one. The rest have all been Skype, yeah.
Have you ever, well, I suppose, of course you have, but on our show, we get a lot of positive feedback, but occasionally we get the occasional bad apple or bad egg. Do you ever get any really annoying criticism?
Yeah, sometimes in the comments you get some people, although I find that I tend to look at them as that they've got the problem, really. They're the ones with the issues, like, I've been accused of being a MI5 operative or being a disinfo agent or the usual kind of rubbish. What sometimes I actually pretend.
Yes. What was the first thing you said they accused you of?
Being a MI5 operative.
Oh, wow.
Just because I went to Egypt and Israel, actually it's not that difficult. You can just buy a ticket, because I was in Ukraine and places like that. It's like you can just buy a ticket to go to these places, and it's not even that expensive. I literally live hand to mouth, pay for all these tickets out of my own money. And traveling from somewhere like Egypt to Israel, for example, is you can get tickets for like $100. So it sounds glamorous, but it's not as expensive as people might think.
Is it dangerous in those areas?
Sometimes, but I mean, I guess one of the more dangerous times was in Ukraine when I was in Odessa, and it was really kicking off there. There was people shooting in the streets and bombs going off near where I was staying. So that was kind of dangerous.
You're in the middle of a war zone.
Well, it was only one day in Odessa where things got quite dangerous. Most of the problems are in the east of Ukraine, and I wouldn't go there, to be honest. I wouldn't risk it. But other times, I guess, in Thailand, I actually arrived in Thailand just before the tsunami, which killed over 230,000 people. I arrived 5 hours before that, and so that was dangerous, but at the same time, I slept through most of it. I was sort of a couple of floors up in a hotel, so I was okay. People always warn me about traveling to certain countries like Ukraine and Brazil and places like that, but I would honestly say I find London more dangerous than most of the places I go to.
Interesting.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't walk across a park late at night in London. You're more likely to be in danger than you are, say, walking at night in Ukraine, for example.
You might find Lee Murray out there, Daniel. Yeah, I don't think Scott knows who that is, but
I don't know. Who's that?
He was a mixed martial artist who went to prison for a very long time for a heist.
Okay. Yeah, I heard you guys were into martial arts. I'm actually training with Thai boxers over here in Koh Samui.
Nice.
Oh, I was thinking about asking you about that, but that's wonderful news. So you're actually doing some Muay Thai training. Fascinating.
Yeah. I'm training 5 days a week at the moment. Decided to try and get as fit as I possibly can. So for the last 2.5 months, I've been going 5 days a week, training 2 hours a day. And it's one of the best ways, fastest ways of getting fit. Those guys really push you. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not a boring way either. It's a very fun way to get in shape and exercise, because most of the time it gets very boring doing the same routine over and over, lifting weights, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, sometimes the routine is the same here, but I never get bored. It's a great way of getting rid of stress as well. There's nothing better than just hitting something really hard to get rid of stress.
Do you get really sore shins?
I get sore everything, to be honest. Even today I'm quite sore, especially if you do it each day. I'm not used to doing something day after day, but you get the weekends to recover. You get sore, but then if you get some of that Thai oil, you rub it on your muscles and it kind of warms them up and gets you ready for the next time.
Good self-defense, too, in case you ever walk in one of those London back alleys.
Exactly. I'm ready to walk across a London park when I get back. And if anyone attacks me...
Yeah, you're ready to go.
Yeah, exactly. Although I am slightly worried that I'll get really good at Thai boxing and then I'll leave it for like 6 months and then someone will attack me and I'll have forgotten everything.
Yeah, that tends to happen. You got to actually keep practicing these sort of things. And I think we have a caller right now. Hold on 1 second. Let me answer this. Caller, you are on the air. What's going on?
Hi, Mike. Hi, Dan. Hi, Scott.
Hello.
Scott, what is your most memorable travel where you stayed, maybe you camped out or stayed with a group of people? What stands out in your mind the most? What was your favorite? Something that you just really loved?
It's difficult to choose one, but there's definitely a couple. Many years ago, I went to Fiji when it was less touristy, and I stayed on an island and met the village chief and sat down with the local elders, and we drank this drink called kava, which is like an anesthetic, and it kind of numbs your brain. And I just remember sitting there and smiling, and everyone in the room was smiling, but nobody said anything. And it was kind of a very peaceful, nice experience. And they were so happy, and they had nothing. They lived in like mud huts, but they lived on a beautiful island, and there was no tourists there or anything. I'm sure it's changed now, but that was a great experience for me. And it taught me that, all these possessions that we have, back in the West, it really counts for nothing. And in some ways, it seems to make people unhappy. These guys were so happy. They had literally nothing, but they seemed to be able to entertain themselves with things around them. And that taught me a lot. But on a bit of a darker level, I went to Hiroshima in Japan, and I met an old lady who was a survivor of the bomb, and talking to her really had a big impact on me.
Yeah, that sounds awful.
Yeah, she was just talking about when she was only like 8 years old, and she was telling me about what happened, and it really made me think, these weapons, they just need to be got rid of for sure. Just get rid of them. They should never be used again.
Back to your experience with the village, they probably don't have the high blood pressure brought on by, I can't afford the mortgage payment this year, or crap like that. And that's, I think, that kind of, I wouldn't even call it poverty. They're probably richer in the human spirit than most people are in first world nations.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we live in a society where we've got pressures all the time to cover our food, to cover our accommodation. Even water these days, you have to buy it. Here in Thailand, you have to buy it. You can't drink it from the taps. And we've all got all these pressures that if we get down to nothing, got no money, you can't live, you can't survive. Whereas those guys, they've got their mud huts, they've got everything they need around them to eat with. The pressure is gone. They don't need to necessarily work too much, apart from to maybe go out hunting or catch some fish.
They probably barter for the things that they don't have that much of, or maybe someone grows more in their garden, say, than another person does something else, does fishing, and they barter.
Yeah, I think they do. Maybe that was a better way of living. Things have become a bit more complicated, I think, for us.
Yeah, I think that's kind of planned that way, but that's for another time and another show. That's kind of conspiracy theory-ish, but anyway, it sounds exciting, and on a shoestring budget, that way you met the real people.
Yeah. I mean, well, I try and find the good in everyone, really. I mean, even people you might not think, are real people. They've all got something to offer, but people with less seem to have a bit more in their personality anyway.
Much of a better appreciation.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and an appreciation and an ability to empathize with other people. And going back to the royals, that's why they're so disconnected from the rest of society. How can they possibly look to them for any kind of guidance, when they have everything they want? I don't find those kind of people real people.
I can't argue with that.
As to whether they're reptilians, well, that's another matter.
What was that, Star? Sorry.
I said, okay, I'm going to jump off the line.
Oh, okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for calling in.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Goodbye.
And that was Star, also known as Marcy. Great caller. She calls in here every now and then, and I appreciate that. She always comes in here with some pretty good questions.
Yeah, seemed like a nice lady.
Yeah, she's a great lady. One thing I did want to ask you about was, have you done any shows on the flat earth theory? These people are very adamant, I'm telling you. I already got quite a few different emails during the break about our first guest and how he wasn't really on board with the whole theory. He was already getting attacked. And that kind of leads me to another question relating to that. Daniel had asked you about your favorite guest, and I was curious if there was perhaps any other guests that you might have talked to that might have gotten upset with you.
Right. Well, first of all, about the flat Earth theory, I'm trying to get someone on to talk about that because I really respect the idea that we should not trust anything that we believe and keep an open mind. So I like the idea that these guys are sort of questioning something huge. I'm not sure I really agree with them. I haven't heard enough evidence to suggest that I believe them, but I'll always talk to people about anything and keep an open mind. And I respect that, there's too many people who believe what they believe without actually doing any investigation whatsoever. So I respect those guys. I've had people say things that I completely disagree with, but I don't see it as my job to try to change their opinions. I prefer to let people say what they believe, let other people listen and make up their own minds. I mean, I might sometimes question what they say, but no, I haven't had any serious runs in. I wouldn't mind if I did, to be honest, because I think it could be interesting. But I'll certainly debate someone. But, I'm learning as I get older that if you're going to debate someone and get really angry, you've kind of lost the debate. It's not the way to do it.
Right.
It's not the way to go. I've done it in the past myself. I've been like that. I've been someone who argued with someone and then got really angry, And now I hope I'm maturing, and I just don't think that it's necessary to do that.
Now, I'm sure you're aware of what's been going on over on this side of the pond, Scott, with the latest shootings.
Yes, I've been seeing some of that stuff. That actually makes me angry. Watching those videos, that kind of makes me angry.
You saw that Facebook video, by the way?
I've seen a few of them. I've seen the one with the guy that whose girlfriend, is just live streaming the shooting, and the other guy who gets dragged on the floor. I've seen all of them over the years. Kelly Thomas, that one really affected me. That homeless guy, and he wasn't black as well. I think it's not just a case of black people being killed. I think it seems to me that the U.S. police are trained to kill over something rather trivial, like they need to raise the threshold of when it's okay to kill someone. It's not okay to kill someone if you have a slight feeling you might be in danger. That's not good enough for me. Life is more valuable than that. You should feel like you are definitely going to die before you start pulling triggers. And I think these guys are killing people if they get a slight feeling of being uncomfortable, That's the way it seems.
Yeah, it definitely seems that way. It was completely insane to see that video of, I believe, Philando Castillo. That's the video where he was with that woman and a child. That was just insane to see.
It was.
And by the way, she seemed very calm.
She did. I made a comment about that on Twitter. She seemed extremely calm. Maybe it wasn't really sinking into what was really taking place,
It seemed very unusual. I don't think I'd be acting that way if someone I liked or loved, whatever, was just right there looking kind of lifeless and bleeding out like that.
True, yeah, no, that was strange. But then later on, I saw a video of her later on. She was much angrier. And also, you got to wonder, like, this was her boyfriend, yeah? I mean, how long has she been dating this guy? If this was someone she was engaged to be married to, maybe there'd be more emotion. But, I mean, how long had she known this guy? I don't know. But there was another one. I don't know if you saw another one with another woman with a child who was wrestled to the floor and then stood upon and called her slanderous names by the police, a policeman. And that was horrible as well. I just, there's something wrong,
It seems like that there's some sort of issue in this country with police officers.
It does. I think it's because it's coming out of their training manual,
Yeah, I was talking about this earlier on, and I don't think it's all police officers are like this. It's just a few of them, but those few are the ones that stick out the most, of course, and cause the most damage.
Well, I think there's another problem which makes it a bit worse, and that is, fine, if you're going to get bad eggs, fine, but then bring justice to these people, and they're not bringing justice to these people, and this is the major problem. Like, if you look at the Kelly Thomas situation, I don't know if you remember that guy, homeless guy that got beaten to death by the police.
Yeah.
And it was all captured on video, yeah? The whole thing was captured on video. And these guys got off, I don't think anyone can watch that video and say this is how the police are supposed to treat someone. So if they're going to let something like that happen and then say, actually, these police guys are innocent, they did everything right, and they've done this on other cases, then they're going to have problems. If they're not going to resolve that situation, if they're not going to bring these people to justice, then this is what's going to happen. You're going to get riots,
We've seen some of that. And interesting enough, the Dallas sniper incident, going back to that, I imagined something was going to happen, but I didn't envision someone like this, though, someone who was this decorated. He had gone to Afghanistan a couple times, I believe, and he was a part of some radical group. And I believe he had some sort of manifesto that we probably won't ever find out anything about for a while. And I kind of wish we could. Be interesting to see that.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, things have taken a turn for the worse with the police officers getting shot, and you're right that there's obviously plenty of good police officers out there, and I'm sort of borderline anarchists, but I still think in a system of anarchy, you would probably need a police force, and trying to get the right kind of people to do that job, the good guys, the ones that actually want to look after people. It's unfortunate that some of these guys that have been shot, they were probably good cops, so it's not really logical thinking, is it, for a sniper to be shooting people he doesn't even know,
Do you like Hillary or Trump better?
I can't stand Hillary. I think she's the absolute fake, worst kind of politician. Trump is slightly better. That's all I can say. I'm not a big fan of his. I think some of the things he said are kind of stupid. At the same time, I understand why people like him, because he's not a politician, and a lot of people are really sick of politicians. But that doesn't mean that Trump is necessarily going to be the answer. I think there's probably people on the street that are much more sensible than Trump. He seems a little bit prone to reacting to things straight away. Some of the things he said in the past are kind of stupid. But at the same time, a breath of fresh air. So I'm kind of I'm split with Donald Trump. But Hillary, I can't stand her. Yeah, I mean, she's just the stereotypical lying politician.
Yeah, and she seemed to get away with a lot of carelessness. Really, she's been getting away with a lot of it, and I think she's still ahead in polls, by the way.
Yeah, it's amazing. There's a lot of people voting for her just because she's a woman. Well, I would say, well, if you just want a woman to be president, then how about a female serial killer? Would that be okay? Surely the actual person is important. It's not. You can't just want the first female president. It's kind of stupid thinking, and you only have to look at Hillary Clinton, listen to her speeches, to be able to see that she is lying about pretty much everything. She'll change her views to get more votes. And if you look at some of the things she's done in the past, when she was a lawyer, getting off borderline pedophiles and admitting it, you can see the videos on YouTube. She's a very dislikable person in my book.
I think they all are pretty unlikable.
Yeah, she's just at the bottom of the barrel, though.
I'm going to have to agree with that. I really don't like any of these people, and it's terrible that this is the best we got.
This is why I don't really vote, because how am I going to vote for, it's like voting to be drowned or shot, I don't really like any of them.
For sure. Or waterboarded.
Yeah.
That's another fun one.
Oh, yeah, that's great, I've heard.
So I do want to know your opinion on 9/11, since that's always an interesting topic to touch over.
Yeah, well, I mean, 9/11, it's quite obvious to me that the towers came down in a very strange way. In fact, why are they coming down at all would be my first question. The second one is Building 7. What the hell happened there? Why is that building coming down? It's like these buildings are dropping for no reason, Donald Rumsfeld was asked about Building 7 as to why it had come down, and he said, "What's Building 7?" Which I find very strange. There's lots of strange things that occurred that day, and Pentagon plane. What the hell went on there? I mean, there's no video of the plane coming in. There are witnesses that saw a plane coming in, and I dare say there was a plane there. But it seems sensible to me when people say that that's an impossible flight, to fly that low and to hit the building at that level. That seems fairly logical. I don't see how that flight could have taken place. I didn't used to believe that conspiracy theory that it wasn't a plane that hit the Pentagon, but after some time thinking about it and investigating it, it doesn't add up. It was probably a missile, and so you've got to ask what the hell went on that day. And again, there's so many questions, and it's difficult to find the answers. But the official story is for sure nonsense. So that's why a lot of people are questioning what happened that day.
Yeah, the official story is it's so hard to believe.
Down to passports being found of the hijackers. That's ridiculous. That's just so stupid.
Yeah. Passports being undamaged, right?
Yeah, an undamaged passport when everything else has been incinerated doesn't make any sense, It
really doesn't. It really doesn't.
No, and then the only video we can get of the Pentagon plane is this kind of half-second shot of a nose of something hitting a building,
It's quite rubbish, like you said. And it's just insane, really, that's kind of the best video they got for us, really.
Yeah, and
yeah, the Osama bin Laden thing. Me and Daniel talk about this all the time, and we've talked about this for years now. How me and Daniel had both talked about this, I think, outside of this show before we even started doing the show. I believe we had talked about Osama bin Laden being dead back in 2001.
I find the whole idea that he was assassinated that day, in that raid, a bit strange as well. Like, it just doesn't make sense. If you're going to say, like, they killed him, then they buried his body at sea, and they wonder why people don't believe them. I mean, they said they buried his body at sea in accordance with Muslim principles, which is also stupid. It's like, well, you can't argue on one hand that this guy isn't a true Muslim and then give him an Islamic burial at sea, which apparently isn't that Islamic anyway. It's no wonder people have conspiracy theories if they're going to create these stupid situations. I
really hated seeing that and hearing that, the whole burial at sea. I just kept thinking, why couldn't they just show us videos or photos? Who cares if it pisses off anyone? They showed us footage of Saddam getting killed, or not getting killed. Well, actually, yeah, there's video of him, right?
Yeah.
Of him being hung.
Or at least one of his copies, maybe.
One of his copies, exactly, because there's lots of these political figures who have doubles, just like El Chapo.
Yeah.
Another one who has a double. Wild.
I wish so bad that I had some doubles.
I know. So do I.
Apparently, I've got lots of doubles. People keep saying they see me in places, and it's definitely not me.
I want to clone myself, Scott.
I'm sure you'll be able to at some point.
I would love to. That'd be amazing.
Wait 10 years, and I think you'll be able to do that.
What about this gun control issue? Is it better to have guns or not have them?
Well, obviously, as I'm from the UK, we don't have guns, and I can see two sides of the story. Like, it does seem a bit too easy to get hold of a gun. I certainly would, if I was living in America, I might support only certain people being able to have guns. Like, I don't see why a nutcase should be allowed to get a gun. But
right.
At the same time, this period in history when you can't trust the government, I can see why people would want to hang on to their guns for sure. It's definitely a difficult issue. Like, if you've got a gun and someone attacks you, then you can defend yourself. So I can get that. At the same time, in an ideal utopian society, nobody would need guns, but we don't live in a utopian society at the moment.
Of course. Yeah,
so it's a tricky one, The only thing that I do find slightly disturbing is how some people in the US seem to love their guns a bit too much.
Yeah, we definitely are a gun culture here, and it's very difficult to get guns in California. By the way, it's extremely hard to do. You got to go through a lot of hoops.
Okay, yeah. I've got mixed views on it. I think there's trigger happy people around. That's the only problem as well. Like, I remember I read a story about a guy who went into someone's garage just because his ball went there or something, or he dropped something, and then he got shot dead. I think fine, have guns, but respect human life as really sacred, like that Zimmerman case. I mean, that guy's a psycho, like selling his gun, like what a complete asshole, Someone like him shouldn't have a gun.
No, not at all. And I have my license to carry a gun, but I would ever want to actually harm anyone with it, though, of course, unless, they're trying to break in and they have a gun or a weapon, then of course that's a different story.
Yeah, and I think this is the dilemma. In a utopian society, I wouldn't want to have a gun, and I wouldn't want anyone else to have a gun. But if someone was to be attacking me and there was a gun nearby, I'd want to reach for it. So it's a tough one. It really is a tough situation.
It is. Yeah, because then you can actually, in certain cases, you can actually end up getting sued by that person.
Yeah, and that's happened in the UK. A guy went onto someone's property to rob him and steal. The house owner shot him. There was two guys, I think. One of them died and one of them lived, and the survivor sued him. I think he sued him successfully as well, and I think the house owner went to prison, although he had lots of support. I don't know if he's out now.
Speaking of shootings, are you a soccer fan?
Yeah, I've been watching the Euros over here in Thailand, and I still play five-a-side football. But I'm not completely religiously into soccer, but yeah, I like to play and I like to watch, yeah.
Do you have a favorite team?
Manchester United. I don't support one particular team necessarily, although I tell people it's Manchester United. But I've been to see Arsenal play quite a lot when I've been in the UK.
They did well this year.
Well, they did well enough to stay in the top four, as they usually do. I was really pleased that a team this year actually won the Premier League in the UK, and they were, it was just an absolute miracle. Leicester, they weren't expected to get anywhere. In fact, the previous season they were almost relegated. And so to see a team like that, made up of players that weren't on an absolute fortune, it was great to see. So I like those kind of stories, the underdog, really.
Do you think that most of these terrorist attacks are fake?
No, not at all. I'm not one of those people that every time I hear a story, it's a fake, it's a false flag. But at the same time, I did just do a recent podcast on the Orlando shootings.
Okay, yeah. That was also just wild.
There was a lot of inconsistencies in that.
Yeah, there was, actually. That's true.
Lots of inconsistencies, and I don't mind examining them and asking the questions and saying, is this a false flag? Because definitely false flags have occurred throughout history. But I don't like it when people say, oh, this is definitely a false flag, these are definitely actors, and if they met someone who supposedly had lost a son or daughter, they would go up to them and say, you're a liar or whatever. I would never do that, because you'd have to be pretty damn sure you know what you're talking about, and I think it's difficult to be able to do that.
Yeah, there's definitely been a history of false flag operations, especially from our country with the Gulf of Tonkin incident. That's can't really debate that.
Yeah, no, there are. I mean, I'm sure there are false flags occurring, and there are things that the security services, MI5, CIA, they're playing political games, and we have to try and work out which ones are real and which ones aren't.
Definitely come across some genuine sentiments in those areas that you've been to. Like Egypt has a very large Muslim population, and Israel as well.
Yeah, I've spoken to people in those areas, and it's good to get different people's perspectives. In Turkey, I had an interesting conversation with a guy there who was going off to fight ISIS and was prepared to die.
Oh wow!
Even though he had a wife and family, and I sometimes, I think it's a shame we live in this kind of world where people are almost happy to go off and die and leave kids and families behind. We live in a violent world, yeah.
Truly devastating. And another thing I did want to get into here with you was someone in the chat room, actually. They were talking about aliens, and they wanted me to ask you what you thought about them and their purpose for abductions.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, I keep an open mind to everything, and we did an episode on the Rendlesham Forest incident and Phoenix Lights. I'm really interested in the events where there's multiple witnesses. Those ones I trust a bit more. So any cases of multiple witnesses, UFO incidents like Travis Walton, for example, I find that an incredibly interesting story. And
you saw Fire in the Sky, right?
I saw Fire in the Sky, but I saw also a really good documentary with all the guys that were involved, which I can't seem to find. There's another one on there, but the one I saw, you could tell these guys were still traumatized by what had happened, and I really believe them. I believe that they're telling the truth. Now, the UFOs is something going on our own planet. Are they aliens from another planet? I don't know. Are they interdimensional creatures? Is it related to spirituality? Like demons and angels and things like that. I don't know, but I'd like to find out, and I'm certainly interested in the topic. I've never seen an alien myself, and I'll certainly listen to anyone who says that they've been abducted. I do at the same time. There are some people out there who are attention seekers. There are some people out there who are actually crazy. There are some people out there that maybe are a bit delusional or have vivid imagination. So, as with everything, you have to try and sort out which ones you want to believe in. But multiple witnesses, I tend to trust a bit more.
Yeah, some people do have very active imaginations, definitely.
Could these reptilians exist even if the queen isn't one? Could there be a race of reptile aliens out there?
Well, like David Icke talks, everyone makes fun of David Icke about the reptilians thing, but, even science says that there's some kind of we've got some reptilian traits in humans. Now, whether the queen is a reptile, well, she is to me, but that's probably in a different way. But metaphorically speaking, I think she is a reptile.
Yes.
Literally, David Icke talks about her as shape-shifting. And the way I look at it is, I'm not sure how dark a world we live in. Do we live in a world where everything is physical and, we're being lied to about things, but we don't live in a spiritual world, it's physical? Or do we live in a really dark world where we can't see what's happening behind the scenes in the spirit world, and that there are kind of shape-shifting reptilian beings? I'm prepared to accept that. I do believe in a spiritual world, and I think the world is a lot darker than most of us want to believe. And so, yeah, I'm prepared to accept that there are reptilians, there are evil entities, but I can't prove it, and I wouldn't say I know for sure. So, as confused as ever, I think.
Do you plan on investigating it further with your show?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I'll always be looking at UFOs. In fact, I like talking to anyone about anything. I had the guy on recently to talk about Planet X, who thinks that it's coming in 2017. Some people might laugh at him. Personally, I just want to hear what he wants to say, and I want to sort of consider the facts.
Is that Marshall?
No, this was David Mead. I spoke to a guy called David Mead.
Yeah.
Who I don't think is as well known on the scene, but I found what he had to say quite interesting. I like listening to these people, and some of them may be right about things. I wouldn't laugh at many people. There's very few people I would completely mock. I don't like mocking people for their beliefs. I like to listen to them and let other people decide what they think. There might be some people I would just think that's ridiculous, but I'll keep it to myself.
You have to be very, very brave and stubborn to go against the grain.
Yeah, you do. I mean, at the same time, there are some people that I talk to and I just feel like they're lost. They're lost in a kind of fantasy world. It's kind of like being part of a club to them. It's like it defines who they are. They want to believe everything because they think it makes themselves a bit more interesting. So I'm aware of those people as well.
Yeah, they seem to be very frequent speakers at different conferences out there. I definitely believe that. There's some out there that I definitely don't really believe in their stories, but I will be very nice to that, and I won't mention their names.
Yeah, I'm sure there are some fakes out there, but I mean, some of them aren't necessarily nefarious. I mean, I remember seeing a program about a guy who said he was psychic, and he was tested on his psychic abilities, and he was found to be just using psychological techniques, but he didn't realize he was using them, and he was actually crying. And I felt a bit sorry for him. He wasn't really a charlatan. He was someone who believed he thought he was psychic, but he actually wasn't,
Mike, the Wolfman himself. And I believe he had a question for you, Scott.
Great.
Go ahead.
Am I on?
Yes, sir. Go ahead and ask your question.
Oh, how are you doing, guys? I was going to ask you, since you said you don't mind hearing about just about anything, what would you think about my experience with seeing a 4-foot-tall rabbitoid creature, sort of a 4 feet tall, jumped about 25 feet in front of my face, up through a channel where a sewer system, and it jumped right up through that, soaking wet, landed in front of me, skirted up the road faster than anything I've ever seen, and it was about the size of a coyote or a dog, but it was shaped like a rabbit.
I would say, did you take any photos of it?
Well, obviously it was like 4 o'clock in the morning, and so I didn't have time to. It was skirted away so quickly, I could never have possibly gotten a camera out and snapped a picture in the middle of the dark.
Yeah, so I would say, well, if you saw that and you believe you saw that, then you're the one who knows the reality of it. I would need to see that myself as well, to see this kind of 4-foot tall rabbit. But I've got no reason to disbelieve you. I've only just met you though, so I'd have to maybe spend a bit more time with you, Wolfman, before I totally believe the story about the rabbit.
Terrified, shaking in my boots after seeing that.
Why would you be terrified of it, though? Do you think it was because it was running away, right? So if it was...
It almost seemed like it was trying to, just be showing me a lesson of something sort of, like, here I am, I'm the powers of darkness or something, and just right in front of you and just taunting me. And why would it just land right in front of me and then just take off like that, spitting water in my face?
It's not very nice, is it? No, but if it really wanted to hurt you, it would have hung around, wouldn't it, and started attacking you?
No, it definitely would have, but I don't think it wants to hurt me. I think it wants me to bring me to the dark side.
Okay, well, we better keep an eye out for it then. But yeah, no, it's an interesting story.
Definitely. Thanks for calling in.
What about the elfland creatures? Have you seen anything like elves or gnomes or anything?
I saw a girl at a nightclub once who had quite pointed ears, but apart from that,
Thanks for calling in, Wolf. We love you. Oh my! And that was the Wolfman.
he's got some throat issues there, isn't he?
Yeah, he needs to clear his throat. Definitely. Love the Wolfman. Appreciate that call. Great call. So, Scott, we are kind of getting to a close with the interview with you, sir. Is there anything you would like to add before we let you go soon here?
Yeah, I would just say question everything. Don't necessarily get too upset about certain subjects. You know, try and question. Keep listening to End of Days Radio and come and check us out at Truth Sentinel as well. You can find us at www.truthsentinel.co.uk or on YouTube, Truth Sentinel with Scott. You'll find episodes on all kinds of things like human head transplants. We had an interview with Valery Spiridonov, he's going to have his head transplanted onto another human body in about a year's time.
That's amazing.
So check out the interview we had with him, and make sure you tune in to End of Days for that.
So much we didn't cover tonight, but I believe we can bring you back in the near future, and we could touch base on all these great topics again.
Definitely, yeah. I'd be happy to come back anytime and talk about all kinds of different things.
So, Scott, once again, thank you for being on the show. It was truly an honor and a pleasure to have you here on the show.
Great to be here, and I hope one or both of you will join us on Truth Sentinel sometime as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thanks, guys. Take it easy.
Bye-bye.
And goodbye to all of you. Have a good week. Thanks for listening. Catch us at www.truthsentinel.co.uk. Bye-bye.